So let's bring in Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, former CIA director, a Fox News contributor, and he last visited Israel in February. Has been there many, many times. Secretary, good to have you with us today. Can you explain this to me?
With you, Martha.
So you've got Antony Blinken trying to work out a new alliance between Saudi Arabia and Israel, which you also worked on when you were in the Trump administration, on the one hand. And then you have the State Department standing at the podium saying, we're going to potentially rescind aid to Israel because of human rights violations that happened before October 7th. Can you explain that strategy to me?
Sadly, no, Martha. You're going to have to go someplace else to get a decent explanation of that. What I can tell you is it demonstrates the absolute moral confusion inside of the Biden administration. They have refused to have the moral clarity to understand that Israel is fighting to defend its own nation, and that it's Iran and Hamas that are terrorizing the citizens not only of Gaza and of Israel, but of the United States and the world. And they get it wrong, right? Remember the beginning administration. The first thing they did was take the Houthis off the terror list. Mm-hmm. Now they're sanctioning or threatening to take away funding to Israel because of something that happened long predating October 7th. If the United States can't understand the difference between the good guys in this fight, the people who are fighting for freedom, frankly, fighting to make life better for people in Gaza itself, and the bad guys, the Iranians and the Hamas terrorists that are holding not only Israelis but Americans hostage today, then you get this kind of crazy, muddled policy that is absolutely unexplainable.
Okay, because that's the way it looked to me. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Because listen to Antony Blinken, who is, I think, on his 7th trip to the Middle East since October 7th, and he's trying to put together a deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel, while back at home they're condemning Israel and saying they're human rights violators. This is what Blinken had to say. Watch.
I think the single biggest, most effective rebuke to both Iran and Hamas would be Israel having normal relations with every country in this region.
I would imagine you would agree with that.
That I agree with. And the way to do that is not to put pressure on the Israelis and the IDF. It is not to restrain them from defending their homeland. Precisely what the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Emiratis, the Omanis, the Kuwaitis, they all want for their own country, to be able to defend themselves. When you are muddled, when you don't have moral clarity, the confusion that you're expressing, Martha, is absolutely what the whole world will see. This is dangerous. I pray that we will help the Israelis get to where they need to be to keep themselves secure, and that we can build out and build on the Abraham Accords and get a more peaceful, more prosperous Middle East. You can't do it by creating space where Hamas watches what's taking place on our campuses in America and our State Department here in Washington and saying, America is confused. It's time to threaten it.
Yeah, I remember right after October 7th, there were some celebrities who were cheering on the paragliders that landed in the music festival at the beginning of that horrific assault and killing. And, you know, you don't hear a lot of specificity about Hamas's role in what they have done to Gaza. Over the course of their leadership there. And we don't hear that from the president either. It seems like that would be a fairly easy line of understanding to press on what the U.S. policy is.
Martha, that's exactly right. That's what I alluded to at the beginning of my comments. The terrorists in Gaza are Hamas. Mm-hmm. These are the folks who are responsible for everything that happened inside of that place since 2006. The devastation, the famine, the hard lives of the people who live there, the Gazans who lived in that strip of land. It's the direct result not of what Israel did. They haven't had an Israeli there since 2006. These are the people who have oppressed the Gazans. And when the war came, when the atrocities of October 7th took place, they began to put these folks in harm's way every day. And they have used those civilians to try and get leverage against Israel and the United States, and we can't let them do that. The problem here is Iran and their terrorists that they funded there, Hamas. And if we don't recognize that and impose real costs on them, it'll be dangerous not only for the people of Gaza and those citizens who have suffered so much, but the people of Israel and the wider Gulf Arab states as well.
I want to squeeze in two more questions real quick if I can. The first one is, what would you say to those who say, well, there's no more occupation by Israel, but the blockades are essentially an occupation because you can't get in or out through the main entrances to Gaza?
Yeah, absolute nonsense. There have been openings, there have been gates, there have been the capacity to get concrete, food, supplies, electricity, all in, all assisted by Israel. Israel assisted by allowing folks to work inside of Israel and travel back and forth between Gaza. That's just pure nonsense, Martha.
All right, here's Hugh Hewitt. Different topic before we go. Here's what he had to say when he was asked who would be in a Trump cabinet if the former president is reelected. Watch.
If one of them doesn't get named for VP, I think they ought to go to defense, either Cotton or Pompeo.
Your thoughts on your name being proposed for either vice president or secretary of defense? Are these roles that you want?
Martha, whenever I've been asked to serve and I thought it could make a difference, I've said yes. If President Trump were to ask me, we haven't talked about it. I doubt that we will for a bit. But if he reaches out to me and says he thinks I can help, I'd be honored to accept and do my best to serve in the same way that I tried to do as CI Director and Secretary of State.
All right, we'll see where it goes. Thank you so much, former Secretary Mike Pompeo, current Fox News contributor. Good to have you here always. Thank you, sir.